December 31st, 1942, the Barren Sea, polar twilight, 14 merchant ships carrying tanks, aircraft and ammunition to the Soviet Union. Escort force, 6 destroyers, 2 corvettes, a minesweeper and 2 armed trawlers. The trawlers displaced 545 tons each. Their heaviest weapon was a single 4-inch gun firing a 31-pound shell. Coming out of the Arctic darkness, a German battle squadron. The heavy cruiser Admiral Hipper, 14,000 tons, 8 8-inch guns. The pocket battleship Lutzow, 12,000 tons, 6 11-inch guns, 6 fleet destroyers. Combined displacement exceeding 44,000 tons. Combined broadside weight measured in the thousands of pounds. The trawlers had no business being there. Converted fishing boats, crewed by former fishermen, armed with weapons from the previous war. Naval experts dismissed them as target practice. The Kriegsmarine expected to annihilate the convoy in minutes. Instead, those fishing boats helped win a battle that ended Hitler's surface fleet forever. This is the story of the armed trawler, the most outgunned warship in Royal Navy history, and how fishermen who should have run chose to fight. By 1939, Britain faced a crisis it had not prepared for. The Royal Navy needed hundreds of escort vessels to protect Atlantic convoys, patrol the northern approaches, sweep mines from shipping lanes and hunt submarines. Building destroyers took 18 months. Corvettes took a year. Britain did not have a year. What Britain did have was the largest deep-sea trawler fleet in the world. Grimsby, Hull, Fleetwood and Aberdeen operated hundreds of steel-hulled steam trawlers designed for the worst seas on Earth. These boats worked the Iceland grounds, the Barents Sea, and the waters off Bear Island through Arctic winter storms that would cripple a fleet destroyer. Their crews thought nothing of 60 or 70 hours on deck without sleep. Their hulls were built to drag heavy trawl gear through North Atlantic gales. The Admiralty requisitioned them. Over 800 commercial trawlers were pulled from fishing ports. Conversion was brutal and fast. Rip out the trawl gear, turn the fish hold into crew quarters and a magazine, weld a gun platform to the forecastle, bolt a 12-pounder to the platform, fit ASDIC sonar beneath the hull, strap depth charge racks to the stern. Cost per vessel, roughly £33,000, a tenth the price of a destroyer. The men who crewed them were organised into the Royal Naval Patrol Service, headquartered at Sparrow's Nest, a municipal pleasure garden in Lowestoft redesignated HMS Europa. The rest of the Navy called them Harry Tate's Navy, after a clumsy music hall comedian. The name was meant as an insult. The trawlermen wore it as a badge of honour. By 1943, the RNPS numbered 66,000 men operating 6,000 small craft. Consider the mismatch. A purpose-built Isles class. Admiralty trawler displaced 545-ton standard. She measured 164 feet long with a 27-foot beam. Her 850-horsepower triple-expansion steam engine pushed her to 12 knots flat out. Armament consisted of one 12-pounder gun firing a 12.5-pound shell, 3 20mm Oerlikon cannon, and 30 depth charges. Crew, 40 men. Armour, none. A 20mm round could punch clean through her hull, a German Type 1936. A destroyer, the Narvik class, displaced 2,600 tons standard. She made 36 knots on 70,000 shaft horsepower, 82 times the trawler's engine output. She carried 5 15cm guns firing 100-pound shells, 8 torpedo tubes, and extensive anti-aircraft batteries. Crew, 321. A single destroyer's broadside weighed 500 pounds. The trawler's lone 12-pounder answered with 12.5. The destroyer's guns reached 21,000 yards. The trawler's 12-pounder was effective at 9,000. Even the older Type 1934 destroyers outgunned a trawler by roughly 20-1 in broadside weight. Yet the Admiralty sent trawlers to patrol the same waters where these destroyers hunted. The Northern Patrol enforced Britain's distant blockade across a 200 nautical mile stretch between Scotland, the Shetlands, the Faroes, Iceland, and Greenland. Gales of force 9 and 10 were routine. Sea spray froze on decks, rigging, and gun mountings. Men worked continuously with axes and hammers to chop ice away or risk capsizing. After armed merchant cruisers proved too vulnerable, the gaps between Iceland and the Faroes were left to trawlers and minefields from late 1940 onward. The choice was deliberate. Trawlers survived conditions that broke larger warships. The cruiser HMS Emerald, noted for coping best on the Northern Patrol, was built with what designers called a knuckled trawler bow, an admission that the fishing boat's hull form was superior in these waters. The men who operated trawlers had fished these same seas in peacetime. They knew the weather, the currents, and how to keep a small vessel alive when the ocean wanted it dead. The armed trawler's combat record begins with one of the war's most extraordinary acts of courage. April 28, 1940. Namsos, Norway. Lieutenant Richard Bean Stannard of the Royal Naval Reserve commanded HMT Arab, a 531-ton requisitioned hull trawler. Stannard was 37 years old. His father had been lost at sea when Stannard was 10. Arab was covering the evacuation of Allied troops when the Luftwaffe attacked. Over 5 days, Arab endured 31 bombing attacks, 24 by dive bombers, 7 by high-altitude aircraft. 3 sister trawlers were destroyed around her: HMT Aston Villa, HMT Gaul, and HMT St. Goran, all sunk. When bombs ignited tons of hand grenades stockpiled on the Namsos wharf, Stannard drove Arab's bows against the burning quay and fought the blaze with fire hoses for 2 hours. When Aston Villa caught fire and threatened to explode, he defied orders to abandon ship. He boarded Arab, moved her 100 yards, and Aston Villa detonated moments later. Leaving the fjord on damaged engines at 3 to 5 knots, a Heinkel 115 seaplane signalled Arab to steer east or be sunk. Stannard held his course. He reserved fire until 800 yards. His gunners shot the aircraft down. For this action, Stannard received the Victoria Cross, the first awarded to the Royal Naval Reserve in World War II. If you're finding this deep dive into Royal Navy history interesting, subscribing takes a second and supports the channel. 6 months later, the armed trawler HMS Lady Shirley proved that a fishing boat could destroy a submarine in open combat. Lady Shirley displaced 472 tons and carried a single 4-inch gun. On October 4, 1941, operating with the 31st Anti-Submarine Group out of Gibraltar, she encountered U-111, a Type 9B submarine. The U-boat commander, Captain Lieutenant Wilhelm Kleinschmidt, had mistaken the distant trawler for a disabled merchant ship. Lady Shirley's depth charges forced U-111 to the surface. A gunnery duel followed at 450 metres. The submarine's 20mm fire killed Lady Shirley's gun layer with an explosive bullet. A sub-lieutenant took over the gun without missing a beat. Lady Shirley's 4-inch shells struck home, wrecking U-111's engines. Kleinschmidt was killed. 44 German survivors were captured, the first U-boat prisoners taken in the South Atlantic. 2 months later, U-374 torpedoed Lady Shirley in the Straits of Gibraltar. All 33 hands were lost, but the trawler had proven what skeptics called impossible. A fishing boat could sink a submarine in a straight fight. The defining moment came at the Battle of the Barents Sea, December 31, 1942. Convoy JW-51B, 14 merchant ships bound for Murmansk, was attacked by Admiral Hipper, Lutzow, and 6 destroyers in Operation Regenbogen. The escort was desperately outnumbered. Among them, the armed trawler HMT Northern Gem. Northern Gem was originally a Grimsby fishing trawler, purchased by the Admiralty in August 1939 for £32,963. She had already been the last ship out of Narvik. She had escorted Convoy PQ-17 and shot down an enemy aircraft. On the return convoy QP-14, she had taken aboard more than 200 survivors from torpedoed ships. In the confused polar twilight engagement, Hipper's 8-inch guns crippled the destroyer HMS Acates, killing her captain, Lieutenant Commander Johns. Acates continued laying smoke to shield the convoy until she capsized and sank. Northern Gem made smoke to screen the merchantman, then rushed to the sinking destroyer. Coxswain Sid Kerslake and his crewmen went over the side on rescue nets in freezing Arctic water. They hauled 81 survivors aboard. The trawler had no doctor. Ordinary seaman Eric Meyer, a former bank clerk whose wife was a nurse, treated the wounded for hours. The battle ended as a British strategic victory. All 14 merchantmen reached Murmansk undamaged. The German destroyer Friedrich Eckholt was sunk by cruiser HMS Sheffield. Not a single merchant ship was lost. Hitler's fury at this failure led directly to Grand Admiral Raeder's resignation. Hitler nearly ordered the scrapping of Germany's entire surface fleet. A battle in which 2 armed trawlers helped defend a convoy against a heavy cruiser, a pocket battleship, and 6 fleet destroyers changed the strategic direction of the naval war. Northern Gem was not finished. At Convoy ONS-5 in April and May of 1943, widely considered the turning point of the Battle of the Atlantic, she detected U-258 after it torpedoed the merchant ship SS McKeesport. Northern Gem dropped 3 depth charges, damaged the submarine, and forced it back to base. She then rescued all but 1 of McKeesport's crew. She served at Normandy in June 1944. After the war, she returned to Grimsby as a fishing trawler and worked the grounds until being scrapped in Antwerp in 1966. The RNPS lost approximately 260 vessels during the war, more ships than any other branch of the Royal Navy. Hull started with 191 trawlers and lost 96. Grimsby lost over 600 fishermen. Across the entire service, 2,385 men have no known grave but the sea. Their names are inscribed on bronze panels around the Patrol Service Memorial in Lowestoft, overlooking the water from which they never returned. A German Type 1936. A destroyer carried 5 15-centimetre guns, 8 torpedo tubes, and 321 crew. She displaced 2,600 tons and made 36 knots. An Isles-class trawler carried 1 12-pounder gun, 30 depth charges, and 40 men. She displaced 545 tons and made 12 knots. On paper, the engagement should last seconds. In practice, trawlermen fought for hours, days, and years because they understood something the specifications could never measure. The willingness to fight when the mathematics say you cannot win is itself a weapon. Churchill's message to the RNPS upon Germany's defeat said it plainly. You rarely get and never seek publicity. Your only concern is to do your job, and you have done it nobly. They sailed converted fishing boats into the path of heavy cruisers. They screened convoys with smoke while 8-inch shells crashed around them. They depth-charged submarines with weapons designed for the previous war. The armed trawler was the most outgunned warship class in Royal Navy history. The fishermen who crewed them fought anyway. And at the Barents Sea on the last day of 1942, the fishing boats won.